Hello and welcome to the Book by Book, a podcast about the odd book or two we've read. I'm your host Scott, but I'm not alone. Toby's here with me. This episode, I'll be talking to him about Anna by Niccolò Ammanitis. It's going to be a fairly spoiler-free episode, so if that's okay with you, continue on and I'll see you on the other side. And a mixture of being excited and not knowing how it's going to play out as a result, but also disappointed that we're not going to go down the route I thought it would. So a sort of, I don't know, bittersweet, but just a mix of wishing there was an alternate version where I get the movie I wanted. This one.
Brilliant. Okay, your turn then. What we got for us, Scott?
This is Anna by, I'm going to try and say his name correctly, Niccolò Ammanitis. I hope I've got that right. Apologies if I'm not. It's an Italian writer. Unfortunately, this is a post-apocalyptic novel. So
this isn't the Anna that's been made into a film.
No, this isn't. I'm not sure of that movie.
No, I didn't think it was. That's right then.
He has had a lot of dealings in television and film, but this, as far as I know, hasn't had anything made. So it's set in Sicily. We start off, every adult has died globally. Right. As far as we know, globally.
What age does adulthood start? So everybody dies from, you said adulthood. Every adult has died.
Every adult dies, and basically puberty brings it on.
Right, okay.
And it's called the red fever. And it just starts off as red blotches on your arm. A week to 2 weeks, you die.
Damn.
Yeah. So we start off with Anna and her brother Asta. She is about 13 and he is about 11.
Okay.
And for this first part, we're flashing back. So we get a little sense of her mother and how she met her father and how quickly this came about. So the mother's quite pragmatic. She is basically writing on her deathbed like a big sort of book of what the kids are going to have to do and how to survive.
Right, okay.
It's all things like, where to find water, store food, save electricity and batteries, use candles. She's kind of forced to grow up fast because she has no choice and she has a younger brother to look after. Like, the last thing in her mother's book is what to do with her body. And she basically says, you're not going to have the strength to carry me, so just open the window and shut the door and then wait 100 days. Mark it off, like, here's 100 boxes. Every time it gets dark, fill one out. And then I'll be decomposed enough that you might be able to carry me out and bury me. And so this is the world we live in. And it's a strange mix of gruesome and nightmarish, but because all the kids are so young, they get quite frank and matter-of-factly about everything. They very quickly get used to death and bodies and corpses. And so these two stay in their farmhouse. They're sort of in the outskirts of the city. And for the longest time, I think she says one of her neighbors were like preppers, so she can go and get food from them because they died. And just slowly but slowly, she has to go further and further out.
Mm-hmm.
And one day her brother gets sick, but he's probably too young for it to be the fever. But she knows enough about town that she can go in, and she knows about sort of medicine and drugs. And so she...
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The fever passed by contact, is she immune to it? If she was to stay in the house, would she be immune?
Everyone has it.
It just happens once you hit 15.
Yeah, it's sort of activated more so when you hit puberty.
Right, okay.
And so I guess another key thing the mother says is that someone somewhere will survive and someone will have a cure. You just have to sort of stay strong and hope that comes in time. Everything I'm going to describe is going to kind of feel like a YA book, but I feel like it's really above that because we have a 13-year-old girl. I guess she kind of goes on a hero's path, but when we talked about the fireman and the road, we talk about like how bleak this is. And I guess a large part of this book is like, how do you come of age when that kind of means your imminent death? We don't get any more look other than the mother's diary of what the red fever is. There's like zero medical reports. It just happens so quickly. The book is third person, but it's very close to Anna.
Yeah.
Like we don't know things she doesn't know. The book never tells us what's happening the other side of the door.
Okay.
So when she does have to go into the city, it is feral. You basically die at 14, 15, and then the younger kids sort of come into age. So there is this feral brutality. There are a lot of little kids following the bigger kids, but the bigger kids don't really know what they're doing either. They just followed the bigger kid that had them. She's quite cunning. So her brother hasn't really left the grounds of the farm. He sort of wants to at one point, and she sort of knows enough to keep him in. All she's really got is her mother's sort of, here is your guide. You know, try and live by this. But that's all she's got as the voice of an adult. And that's, through the book, the only voice of an adult we get. So she kind of tricks him. She says, like, I'm old enough to be vaccinated and you're not. And he still wants to come with her. So she knows where there's like a dead cow. So she says, like, okay, come with me. But if you smell death, it means he's coming for you. So you better run back. And she just leads him to this cow where he just freaks out and runs back. But it's just getting clear he's getting older and curious. I think something it does well is, you know, when you're young, time is sort of infinite and you're kind of impatient. And it sort of captures that well with the kids, because I think they do spend a good few years on this farm, just them two. And they sort of talk both about the infinite boredom, but the kind of adventure it is at the same time. And so with Zero Adult, and again, it's something it explores really well, it's just, I guess, desperation, but even at such a young age, because they all kind of know, even if they weren't taught it, they know that when you hit a certain age, you're going to die. The idea of a cure is a rumor. It's just fantastical. And every kid kind of has their own folklore of what will work. There's talk of, like, if you eat sand with your food. So she meets a kid who talks about an old lady. They're like, there is an adult, and if she kisses you, you'll live. And she sort of scoffs it, but she just clings to this book that someone out there is working on it. And so the next time she sees him, it's like, yeah, they're gonna find the old woman and burn her and drink her ashes. So every kid kind of has their own folklore, and I guess it's nice in, like, it's that exploring how desperate you can get.
Yeah.
And more so when you're a kid, because not gullible, but you know, the fantastical and the realities are meshed up. And since we're 5 years in, so she's lived in this world for about 5 years. That's how long there's been no adults. So
you know, you join her at this 5-year period, and you're flashbacking through the book.
Yeah, I mean, the flashbacking stops pretty early. She's basically forced to leave the farm. Some kids just sort of come through when she's not there, and they half kidnap, half convince, half seduce her brother to just join them. A lot of it is building up to a hotel where, like I said, there is like an adult, and every kid thinks that a different thing is going to cure them. So there's a lot happening in this book, whilst not moving in a way. A lot of the criticism is that nothing happens, but I guess they mean in a plot structure. But, like, for example, I think the first thing she does in the book is she fends off a savage dog, and she sort of tricks it into a car, and she just sort of attacks it, like stabs it with an umbrella. And then some days later, the dog is still alive but severely wounded, and she just takes pity and leaves it some food and some water and just leaves it. And then again later, she realizes the dog has just sort of gotten better and is following her, but it's now submissive. Like, it's not her pet, but it's sort of, you know, taken to her. She is both quite wise and adult, but also super immature and childish. And we get this mix really nicely just by the way she survives and thinks, but then can just turn around and, you know, get frustrated with childish things. It never feels like it's pandering to kids. This feels like an adult book about kids, which
is it a young adult book?
I mean, it kind of floats in that market.
Yeah.
But this is why we're talking about The Road, because I'm going to try not to spoil this book. It is, everything is futile.
Right, okay.
The hope we feel at the end is, no, this is the last generation.
Yeah.
Like, even if you could survive, it's too far gone. We are like the last generation. Obviously, no new babies are being born.
Yeah, yeah.
And it kind of, like, I would put this up there with The Road. And it's not to say it's perfect. It has its flaws, but for me, as The Road does, you can see why they're there, just to push the plot forward. And I have a problem with The Road. This is a Road spoiler ending, where everyone talks about the hopeful ending because the kid does find the people and they are good.
Yeah.
So there's hope of survival, right? But nothing in the book suggests that they're going to live. Like,
no.
This is the end of days. And I feel like this has a same feel ending, but it kind of addresses it more, I guess, poetically. It never really hits those melancholy depths because we're always following it from a kid. So they always kind of, not distracted, but they have that kiddish thing of never lingering too much on anything.
Mm-hmm.
We get a mix of characters because she's growing and coming into puberty. There is like she meets a guy, she starts getting confused by her feelings towards him. I guess these are the things that feel not necessarily crammed in, but 5 years gone feral, not out of place, but I just don't know if you sort of have these same.
Yeah, those are your natural thoughts.
Like if this was year one and she was this age, it would kind of work. But now we're in this sort of foraging land. It sort of goes out like it would anyway. I was reading some reviews on it. I don't know, some readers thought that it was not necessarily problematic, but you could tell that a guy was writing about a young teen girl. I think there's talks of getting her first period and how kind of easily she deals with this.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with those thoughts?
I don't remember it being an issue. I actually thought the writer was a woman when I first read it. It's Niccolò.
Mm-hmm. Looks like a bit well known.
But I guess those are issues that someone who's been through that would understand. It's not really for me to say with it. Oh no, that doesn't sound believable, right?
So as it's all kids, I guess issues of the usual issues that you come across in those types of addiction, alcohol, drug use, and all of that is not very prevalent in this type of novel.
No, there absolutely is, like, alcoholism and some drug use when they can find it, and it is nightmarish.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
She has to go to the hotel. I think they refer to it as the hotel. So she has to do a kind of journey to where she thinks her brother will be, and it's sort of a big festival. They have some electricity, and she gets wasted. I think it's against her will. I'm a bit of both, but this is probably the hardest to read chapter because the narration becomes in a drunken state, and simple encounters become nightmare paragraphs because she's so wasted.
Okay.
And everything's happening at this festival climax is already nightmarish. That, not that you lose it, not that it's frustrating, but you're like, damn, this is just a nightmare to navigate through. Like, what's happening is a nightmare, and we're making it harder by being drunk. Remember Grand Theft Auto, where you could get the character drunk?
Yeah.
The graphics would sort of mirror that. There's sort of some of that going in narration.
Okay, that's interesting.
Which, for better or worse, I guess it's interesting, but I guess if I'm honest, I wish we could stick with it. Like, I'm happy to read how drunk she is, but I don't want to get drunk with her.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I want to go any more forward because this was a really good book, and it seems like he's pretty big in Italy, and he's pretty well received here. But I don't know why he's not massive. Like, I would put this up there with The Road. This just feels like it does some things The Road does, but better. I guess it on the face of it, it would have tropes of YA fiction, but they kind of don't follow that. Like there's no heroic journey. There's no saving the people. She's not really in it for anyone else or to become the warrior or the one who will change the face of it.
Mm-hmm. You liked how it ended and everything. You were happy with the ending.
I did, yeah. It is. I guess that's not a spoiler, but we hit a midway point where what you think will take you to the end of the book wraps up.
Okay.
Keep going. I guess at times it can feel like, was this a short story that expanded, or was this the intention? I think the translation reviews come in well. I think you asked me last week how I felt it was translated, but nothing felt ugly, and I always feel like I don't really know what to say when I can't comprehend what the original text is, so I can only go off reviews. I think it is pretty well received. I think his previous book did very well, and it's the same translator.
Okay. So what was his previous book?
So he's done about 6 or 7, but four that to me look like they stand out. There's about 3 or 4 that I will probably read, and the others are sort of mafia crime novels, which I don't think I would sort of look into. No. But they are, again, about young teens, isolation, and sort of pre-adolescence. It's I guess it's a strange coming of age story.
Yeah.
Because there's like zero guidance. You know, she has this book which it's almost like her mother couldn't prepare her. Like there's wholeness in her, and a lot of it is spurred on by her brother. There's like comedy moments, not comedy, but because we get that matter of fact child sort of quotes and point of view. There's a point where she gives her brother like a drug, and she says, "Oh, it's a depository," and he's like, "What does that mean?" She's like, "You have to stick it up your bum," and he's like, "Last time I put something up there, it was really uncomfortable. It was like the lid of a felt tip pen. Can I just swallow this?" She's like, "I don't see why not." They don't necessarily seem in for like the chuckles, although they are funny. They just sort of there to cement that these kids they don't really know what they're doing, and they can only go by what they know.
Mm-hmm. So, let me think. Where does it sit? The world that he painted and wrote about and created versus, say, Stations 11 or The Stand or
it was interesting what you were saying about a lot of writers want to go for the dark side of nature, right? And this, not that it falls in between, because they're so young, no one really is. You do get bad kids, and I guess you get wicked kids, but you're always reminded that they are kids. Like when there's a leader of a gang, he's still a kid himself.
Are they painted like as kids acting like adults?
They're often, like I said, there's always a reminder, not just with Anna and her brother Asta. She meets a boy called Petro. He is looking for a certain brand of trainer.
Okay.
He believes wearing these will protect him. Like, so she'll scoff at him, but everyone kind of believes they'll be exempt from it. And they laugh at others when they say that they will be. So there's a strange world. I guess it's this desperation of having to have something. The mother saying someone somewhere will survive.
So this is interesting, right? Do you think it's playing themes? It's playing on the theme of religion and transposing it onto the kids. So she has this book, which is her Bible, in essence. And each of these kids has an urban legend or a myth that they created that will provide them with solace and hope, which is exactly what the Bible does for millions of people all over the world. Do you think there's any parallels?
Yeah, I guess you could for her. I mean, it seems more like it's creating hope out of nothing.
Yeah.
You have to have something to believe in to move forward. Because we do meet kids who sort of show the signs of it, and they are at that point where they become further desperate and or just giving up. And Anna is probably the most hopeful of all the characters we meet. Not many of the characters get a chance to be hopeful. Like it is nightmarish and brutal. Like early on, like she's a survivalist. She's not really a fighter. She knows to run and hide. You know, she knows to play the safest option first. Like she's traveling with a kid, and they see like a gang of boys, or like a gang, like a gang of kids, and she just knows to drop the wheelbarrow full of like the things they have and just to run and hide. And the other kid just starts shooting at them. He sort of has the red fever, so I don't know if it's sort of implied that he's got not much to lose, but he just shoots at them when he doesn't have to, and they end up stoning him to death then and there. And you do get this picture, like no one really deals with corpses, so throughout there are just like everyone is used, like the gruesome has become the norm.
Yeah.
It's not really scary in this world. I mean, very early on, she doesn't want to take her mother out of the house like is in the book. She covers him in rocks, and she covers her in jam so the ants can eat her. And so one day she can bring the bones back into the house, which she does. And she sort of draws all over the bones and has them set up in her mother's bed, which I guess plays into the you were saying, is there a theme of religion? She kind of creates one out of her mother, right? One other thing is, and I guess it's prevalent in kids, that fascination with the unknown and the different. Throughout, you get snippets of, I guess, other kids with deformities.
Yeah,
they are sort of held on a different level. You have a kid. I don't know if you would have got more of this from me. Like I was saying, there's stuff where like the kids just have to do something, and it's just urgent for no other reason sometimes than when you're a kid. You just, the idea of waiting becomes super painful.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily it plays with that. It just captures that really well. I think it like I said, it writes young kids being kids, even in this situation, but for adults. Like it doesn't feel like, I probably wouldn't give this book to like the age of the kid. I don't know if I'd give this a 14-year-old because
it's really dark for a 14.
Like, would you give The Road? When would you give The Road to your daughter?
I'm probably about 25.
So yeah, but I mean, it's strange because going through the reviews, a lot of people bought this for their kid and ended up reading it.
It does sound hopeless, dark, and depressing. To be honest with you.
But it's sort of filled with getting on with life. That's the strange thing about it is, I guess the characters aren't hopeless. We know as adults that it is, but the characters, kind of being kids, play through it. And there is that desperation in them, but they're quite easy to suppress it. Like I said, they can kind of have a belief that they'll be fine.
Basically, what it's saying is there's only 15 years left of the world.
It kind of ends with, okay, what next?
Yeah.
I guess it's not interesting, but like why he chose this moment. I don't know what the youngest child in this world could be. I'm guessing there's a limit to how.
Well, 5 would be if she's been there since.
So that's her brother. Her brother is among the age of the youngest people, and we never get a look, as far as I can remember. Sorry if I'm wrong about this. We never look outside of her world, and we can only assume that this is the world. It is road levels of destruction. I think she goes to a town and she describes it like not one window is intact, not one building hasn't been smashed. Everything has just been touched by this. And by this, we actually sort of mean like the destruction of kids.
Yeah.
There's no talk of a war before this. You know how like
this vandalism,
in the Stand, for example, there's this really exciting and scary bit of the military losing control to sort of other factions, and we're in and out of that at least for a short while. And there are, the military try to control it. There's no hint of that. It's just happened far too quick.
Right. Yeah.
So all the destruction we do read is just, I guess, the initial kids looking for food, and then kids just sort of getting comfortable, and kids will be destructive. I once watched a sort of reality TV documentary where these kids between, I'm not sure, maybe 12 and 15
put
in a house, and they didn't know there was cameras and that their parents were next door, and there was food, and there was just no adult supervision. They didn't go. It was a 2-day experiment, but nothing constructive came out of it. They sort of scratched up the walls. It's that thing of teasing. but once the first mark has been done, it jumps. You know, like one kid drew like a circle on the wall, and so the next kid, if you can do a circle, you can do anything on the wall. So they sort of like just smashed it up, really.
Well, that's it. If one person throws a stone at a window, then the next person has to do it. Otherwise, they're going to look weak.
Yeah, but like the whole building is game. One window or 100 windows. I guess it's strange how the book is desolate to us, but the kids are kind of used to it, and it's not always that grim for them. It's just the way it is. Like the food, they're always scavenging for food, but as far as I can remember, there's never really a lack of it. You just have to look further and harder. Like she survived because she's just had to go further and further for food, but she has always provided. I guess that's a mix of just there being enough in the world, and the kids are always dying off. From day one, every kid who would hit that age would die off, so it's always a shrinking population.
Here's a question for you. Why has the mother written a book?
This is on her deathbed. This is her knowing from like just the world and the newspapers that when you get it, you die, and her knowing that she's got it. Like this is all written. Like I don't think it's a particularly big book. I think it's just described as written in old school exercise books. It's just everything she could come in. You know, she enforces to keep reading and to teach her brother to read.
Okay.
I guess just the guideline. I guess like you're saying, that the 10 Commandments, as it were, they're not always stuck to, but they're always there. I guess that's like it obvious parallels to Lord of the Flies. The only adult we get is Piggy through his auntie. Is we get through this book, which I don't remember. I'm pretty sure she loses it pretty early on for us, but she still had it for some. Like they spent a long time in isolation.
Okay, so basically the adults catch it. They have a period of time where they've got it, and it gets worse, and then they die. It's not like you wake up.
You're kind of bedridden. You can't function out. So so when the adults get this red fever, you soon get just tired and sick and bedridden. So there's no, you can't do much. Like she can only write down and prepare, like try and help them prepare.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds good. Desolate.
It does get compared to the Road and Lord of the Flies, and I can see why, but sometimes it feels kind of lazy. I guess they do have to go down the same theme, reverting to savagery.
Yeah.
There's like book group questions, and one was how perplexed Anna is to when she goes to the sort of motel and a mix between a cult and a festival and a booze up. They sort of have some electricity and set up like a light show, and she's perplexed. And the book group asked, why do you think Anna's perplexed? And I think one answer was she's never really seen art before, something creative done for positive. But she does have it in her, I suppose, because she did draw on her mother's bones. You don't really get a sense that it's ritualistic or artistic. Most, I don't know, she just had an idea to draw on this thing. That was her mother. With this, less is more because they are kids. And a lot of kids seem like they do stuff because they're testing or because they can, or they don't really know why. I mean, like I said, your father, you must come through these.
They don't know how to process the feelings that they've got. So sometimes it's like when some kids, when they see death, they laugh at it or they find it funny or exciting, or because they just don't know the grand scheme of things or how to react to it. It's the first time they get that's the go-to. So I can imagine a lot of that's happening.
I think at some point she tells her friend, who is like the sort of her male counterpart, like the male version of her almost.
Yeah.
She's like, I have to save my brother. And he just says, why?
Yeah.
Like the attachments come pretty cheap here. Like they're almost done out of just looking for leadership for the sake of, the older kid will tell me what to do because I don't know what to do. And then for some kids, this falls apart. And then for some, it's sort of like the only sort of structure that they sort of have.
Yeah.
I don't know. The reviews often say it's good, but not that good, or not what I was expecting. And I do wonder if it's like the cover feels pretty like it's just marketed wrong. It feels.
Yeah, it is clearly marketed. I have no idea that's a post-apocalyptic novel from that cover.
But I also feel like if your protagonist is a 13-year-old girl, it's hard to market outside of that target. So I get that conundrum. Yeah, I don't know, that's kind of all my thoughts. I'm sort of worried I'm going to plan and spoil it. It's definitely worth a reading. Hey, we're going to wrap it up around here. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. Join us again next episode, and until then, support your local bookstores and have a great day.